Kristen and Daniel Chavez looked like the perfect couple, until one of them vanished, and the other's lies began to unravel a deadly truth buried just beneath their backyard. Kristen Chavez was the kind of woman people noticed, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she carried herself with quiet confidence. At 32, she had built a name for herself in the Phoenix real estate market, closing high-end deals and gaining a reputation for her sharp instincts and client-first attitude. Her smile was warm, her voice calm, and her sense of style effortlessly elegant. She wasn't just successful, she was admired. When Kristen announced her engagement to Daniel Chavez, it seemed like the final piece of a perfect life falling into place. Daniel was a former firefighter who now ran a small but thriving home renovation business. Handsome, charismatic, and well-spoken, he was the kind of man who made a strong first impression. He was known for volunteering at local shelters, showing up to community cleanups, and always lending a hand when someone needed help. To outsiders, he was the perfect match for someone like Kristen, strong, dependable, and just as goal-oriented. Their wedding in April 2021 was straight out of a lifestyle magazine. Set in a private vineyard with sweeping views of the Arizona desert, the ceremony was elegant and intimate. Friends and family posted photos under soft lighting and delicate floral arrangements, captioned with words like soulmates and forever. For the first few months, married life appeared to suit them well. They posted couples selfies during hikes, weekend brunches, and cozy nights in. Kristen shared loving tributes on birthdays and anniversaries, describing Daniel as her rock, best friend, and safe place. But as time passed, something started to shift. At first, the changes were subtle. Kristen stopped coming to group dinners. She skipped a friend's bridal shower without explanation. Her once daily social media posts became rare and distant. Some of her closest friends chalked it up to stress at work, or perhaps the quiet settling that happens in every relationship. But others started to worry. Kristen's best friend Alyssa noticed that she had become harder to reach. Phone calls went unanswered. Texts took hours or days to get a reply. When they did talk, Kristen's voice lacked its usual energy. She claimed everything was fine, just busy with work and home projects. Still, her words didn't match the tension in her voice. Her mother mentioned Kristen seemed thinner, more distracted. Her co-workers noted she had been late to meetings and had missed 2 client appointments without notice. Something completely unlike her. By early fall of 2022, Kristen had started withdrawing from even her most trusted circles. She canceled lunch plans at the last minute and made vague excuses about not feeling well. Friends began whispering concerns behind closed doors, wondering if the marriage was more complicated than anyone knew. Still, Kristen never said anything specific. She never asked for help, and no one pushed her. Everyone assumed she would bounce back, that maybe it was just a rough patch. Then, on the morning of October 3rd, Kristen didn't show up for work, and everything began to unravel. The day Kristen Chavez failed to show up for work started like any other, at least from the outside. The sun rose over Phoenix with its usual warmth, and the city moved through its morning routines. But in the office of Chavez & Cole Realty, something felt off. Kristen was never late, and she certainly never missed an important client meeting without notice. By noon, her coworkers were exchanging concerned glances. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unread. Her boss, Michelle Cole, tried to stay calm. Kristen was reliable, one of the top agents in the company. Maybe she'd had a family emergency. Maybe she just needed a day off and had forgotten to let someone know. But as the hours passed, concern turned into alarm. By 5 p.m., no one had heard from her, and there was still no sign of her anywhere. Michelle drove to Kristen's last known listing appointment, but the property was locked and dark. The client confirmed that Kristen had never shown up. That's when the first call to the police was made. Kristen's mother, Elena, arrived at Kristen's house by sunset. Daniel Chavez answered the door looking shaken and pale. He told her that Kristen had left that morning around 6:30 a.m. for an early meeting and hadn't returned. He claimed he hadn't been able to reach her all day either. He assumed she was just working late. His explanation seemed calm, perhaps too calm, but no one wanted to jump to conclusions. Not yet. Police began a standard missing person investigation that night. They logged Kristen's name into the database and issued a bolo, "Be on the lookout." By the next morning, the search intensified. Officers visited her usual coffee shop, combed through her bank transactions, and requested access to her phone and email records. Her phone had last pinged near a local supermarket at 7:12 a.m. on the day she vanished. That became their first real lead. 2 days later, her car was discovered in that same supermarket parking lot. It was locked, parked neatly between two other vehicles. Inside, nothing appeared stolen or out of place. Her purse was still there, untouched. Her phone was hidden in the glove box, wiped clean of all recent activity. There were no fingerprints on the screen, no smudges, no trace of who had last used it. Surveillance footage from the parking lot was inconclusive. One camera had a view of the lot, but the angle was blocked by a delivery truck during the critical hour she would have arrived. The discovery only raised more questions. If Kristen had planned to run away, why leave behind her ID, her phone, her wallet? If this was a kidnapping, why was there no sign of struggle or forced entry? Investigators dug into her social media, phone logs, and emails. They found nothing unusual and no threats, no signs of distress. But something didn't sit right. Meanwhile, Daniel made a public appeal. Surrounded by news cameras, he pleaded for his wife's safe return. He looked devastated, choking back tears. But behind the scenes, detectives noted inconsistencies in his statements. He said he had been home all morning, but couldn't confirm his whereabouts between 6:30 and 11:30 a.m. His phone had been off during that time, something he claimed was a mistake. A simple oversight. Police weren't convinced. Something about Daniel's story wasn't adding up. And they were just getting started. A month after Kristen Chavez disappeared, the investigation had hit a wall. Despite the media coverage, reward offers, and dozens of tips, nothing concrete had emerged. The supermarket parking lot remained the last place she was seen, at least according to the data from her phone. No one had come forward with sightings, and no evidence had surfaced to suggest she had left on her own. As time passed, the public's interest began to fade, but the detectives assigned to the case refused to let it go cold. Then an unexpected lead came from right next door. A neighbor of Daniel and Kristen's came forward with something strange. On the night Kristen went missing, they claimed they had seen Daniel in the backyard digging. It was around 10 p.m., long after dark. He had a shovel and a headlamp. The neighbor assumed it was just gardening, odd but not alarming. Still, after learning Kristen was missing, it didn't sit right with them. They decided to call the police and report it, unsure if it meant anything at all. Detectives immediately took the tip seriously. They secured a warrant to search the Chavez property, including the backyard. When investigators arrived, Daniel stood in the doorway and said nothing. His face was blank. Officers moved quickly, roping off the area and bringing in ground-penetrating radar. It didn't take long for the equipment to detect soil disturbances beneath the surface, exactly where the neighbor had pointed out. They began digging, just 2 feet below the surface. Officers unearthed a large, tightly sealed suitcase. The smell hit them before they even opened it. Inside, wrapped in layers of plastic and a blanket from the Chavez home, were the remains of Kristen Chavez. Her body was badly decomposed, but still intact enough for identification. Dental records confirmed what everyone feared. The medical examiner later determined Kristen had died from manual strangulation. There were bruises on her arms consistent with a struggle. She had likely died early on the morning she vanished, precisely the window of time Daniel could not account for. The killer had taken steps to hide the body quickly, suggesting panic, not premeditation. News of the discovery sent shockwaves through Phoenix. The case that had begun as a missing person story was now a full homicide investigation. Daniel was immediately arrested and charged with murder. His mugshot spread across headlines, and the public turned sharply against him. The same man who once tearfully begged for help finding his wife was now being called a monster. Detectives began retracing every step of the days leading up to Kristen's death. They searched the home again, this time with more focus. In the garage, they found a roll of plastic identical to what Kristen's body had been wrapped in. In the laundry room, a pair of Daniel's jeans, freshly washed, tested positive for Kristen's blood, revealed only through luminol. The illusion of a perfect husband had crumbled. What had once looked like grief now seemed like guilt. What had been called love now looked like control. The case of Kristen Chavez had taken a dark turn, and the truth was just beginning to emerge. In the days following Daniel Chavez's arrest, investigators turned their focus toward uncovering a motive. Why would a man with no criminal history, a beloved member of the community, suddenly kill his wife and bury her in their backyard? The answer would soon emerge from a source no one had expected: his phone. Forensic experts retrieved months of deleted texts and call logs from Daniel's device. Among them were hundreds of messages exchanged with a woman named Mia Wallace. She was a 28-year-old bartender who worked at a downtown Phoenix lounge. At first, the messages seemed harmless, casual, and flirtatious. But as the text continued, the tone shifted. It was clear that Daniel and Mia weren't just friends. They were having a full-blown affair, one that had begun nearly 6 months before Kristen's disappearance. The more investigators read, the more disturbing the conversation became. Daniel frequently referred to his marriage as a burden. He told Mia that Kristen was holding him back, that she controlled everything, and that he felt trapped. Mia, in turn, encouraged him to leave Kristen. In one message, she wrote, "You'll never be free until she's out of the picture." But the most chilling messages came in the weeks leading up to the murder. Daniel began making vague statements about getting out soon and fixing everything. Just 3 days before Kristen went missing, he texted Mia, "It's almost over. She'll be gone before the month is out." Mia replied with a heart emoji. The messages painted a damning picture, not just of infidelity but of motive and possible premeditation. Police brought Mia in for questioning. At first, she denied knowing anything about Kristen's death. She claimed Daniel told her he was separated and living alone. But when confronted with the messages, her story changed. She admitted to knowing Daniel was still married, but insisted she had no idea he was capable of murder. Prosecutors weren't convinced. Further, investigation revealed that Mia and Daniel had taken a short trip together just 1 week after Kristen's body was buried. They had used cash for the hotel, but surveillance footage confirmed their identities. While Daniel was on television pretending to be a grieving husband, he was also on vacation with the woman he'd been cheating with. Even more damning, a search of Mia's apartment turned up a notebook containing handwritten letters from Daniel. In them, he wrote about his new life and how the past would be behind them soon. He described Kristen as the only thing standing in our way. The evidence was mounting fast. Prosecutors amended the charges to include conspiracy to commit murder, with Mia Wallace named as a co-conspirator. Though she hadn't been at the scene of the crime, her encouragement, knowledge, and continued relationship with Daniel after the murder were enough to implicate her. Daniel's trial began 8 months later. His defense claimed that Kristen's death was an accident during a heated argument. But the jury didn't buy it. With the texts, the affair, and the burial in the backyard, the verdict came swiftly: guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for Kristen's family, one question remained. Had Daniel acted alone, the answer would come soon, and it would shock everyone. Nearly a year after Daniel Chavez was sentenced to life in prison, the case of Kristen Chavez seemed to be closed. Her killer was behind bars and the public had moved on. But for the detectives who had spent months unraveling the truth, something still didn't sit right. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Daniel, there were lingering details that never fully made sense. How had Kristen's phone been wiped clean so thoroughly? Who had parked her car so neatly at the supermarket without being caught on camera? And if Daniel had acted alone, how had he managed to bury her body just hours after the murder, with no visible signs of struggle or panic? Then in October 2023, an envelope arrived at the Phoenix Police Department. It was unmarked, containing a typed, unsigned letter. The message inside was brief but explosive. The writer claimed that Daniel hadn't acted alone, that someone else had helped cover up the murder. The tone was cold, almost clinical, and it included details that had never been made public. The exact brand of the plastic wrap used to conceal Kristen's body, the color of the gloves worn during the burial, and the location of a second set of Kristen's clothes she had been wearing the night before she disappeared. Investigators were stunned. Either the writer was involved in the crime, or had direct knowledge from someone who was. A trace on the envelope revealed no fingerprints, but the postmark was from Flagstaff, nearly 150 miles from Phoenix. Using the information provided, police searched the area mentioned in the letter, a storage facility on the outskirts of town. Inside one of the units, rented under a fake name, they found a plastic bin containing Kristen's pajama pants and a t-shirt, both stained with blood. Nearby in the same unit was a burner phone. Digital forensics linked the burner to one person, Mia Wallace. Detectives now had enough to arrest Mia again, this time not as an accessory but as a co-conspirator. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Mia finally confessed. She admitted that she had known about the murder plan before it happened. The night before Kristen disappeared, Daniel had told her he was going to end it. Mia claimed she thought he meant divorce, but when he called her hours later asking for help, she didn't hesitate. She arrived at the house that afternoon. Kristen's body was already in the garage. Mia helped clean up the scene, wipe Kristen's phone, and drive her car to the supermarket to stage a disappearance. Daniel then buried the body while she stood watch. Mia's cooperation led to a plea deal. She was sentenced to 25 years for conspiracy, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. The community was shocked all over again. What had first seemed like a crime of passion was now exposed as a calculated plan, carried out by two people who believed they could erase a life without consequence. Kristen Chavez never got to speak her truth, but the evidence told her story. A woman who once believed she had found her forever in marriage had unknowingly stepped into a trap. A deadly marriage built on lies and secrets had ended in betrayal and death. And in the end, justice, though delayed, found everyone responsible.